Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm deeply honored and very, very glad to be at the MOP Vaishnav College. Women and climate change, actually the links are very obvious and very simple. It's not rocket science to figure that out. You don't have to be an Einstein to see the direct links between women and climate crisis. For one of the biggest impacts, the word climate crisis itself or climate change is a bit of a vanilla term. It conceals. The more correct term, which unfortunately we've all surrendered because to make people understand, we say climate change. But actually the real correct word is global warming. That's what's happening. The glaciers are melting. The heat waves are killing people. I mean, you've had heat waves killing hundreds of people in Europe, right? So if France has seen 3 heat waves in the last 20 years, which have killed lots of people, mostly older people. So global warming is pretty much, the seas are warming, the Antarctica sheet is, thinning, and you could see a major rise in sea levels. But we say climate change. Climate change is like, it's very vanilla. Seasons change, climatic patterns change. It's just another change. However, if you look at it as global warming, then you're going to see, you see what happens when you tell people global warming, they will ask, it triggers a question. Why is the globe warming? And once you start looking at answering the question, why is the globe warming? Then you come to the meaning of the word Anthropocene, where human activity, specifically major sectors of industry, oil, automobile industry, are really driving climate change very, very rapidly. Yeah. But we don't like people asking those questions. 2 years ago at the World Economic Forum, you've all heard of the World Economic Forum, 180 billionaires, went to Davos in Switzerland, flying in private luxury jets to discuss climate change. Now, how much, what size of a carbon footprint was left by 180 luxury jets to discuss climate change? Again, because change is climate change is like seasons change, it's not very aggressive. Anyway, that said, the links between that and women are very obvious, because when the globe is warming at the rate it does, the first impact is on labor. Guys, who does the labor in this world? Women and girls. Do you know how much labor they do that is unpaid? Anyone has an idea of how much unpaid labor occurs every day, every year in the world? The ILO, the International Labour Organization, calculates, that is a UN body, United Nations body, the ILO, it calculates that in the care sector alone, women and adolescent girls perform unpaid work every day equal to 12.5 billion hours. That means every 24 hours, women and adolescent girls are producing unpaid labor of 12.5 billion hours. You calculate how many billion hours that is in a year, if you can do the math. I can't. Now, what is that labor worth? So the ILO and Oxfam took that labor and calculated it region-wise at the minimum wage. Okay? The minimum wage in South Asia, average minimum wage, they calculated. They took Latin America, average minimum wage. They took Africa, average minimum wage, and calculated. Do you know how much unpaid work you girls are doing every year? Women and adolescent girls. $10.8 trillion. You know what a trillion is? It's 12 zeros. I can't fit it in my head. $10.8 trillion every year. Do you know what $10.8 trillion is? $10.8 trillion is greater than the combined market value of all the top 5 great tech companies. All of them together, the 5 big tech companies, come to slightly less than that value. So the unpaid labor of women and adolescent girls is greater than the value of all your tech giants, technology, infotech giants in the world. That's how much labor is produced. Yeah. And this is, as far as I could make out from the ILO docs and records, this is in the care sector. We don't have calculations for other sectors. Yeah. But it is in fact wrong to say that women hold up half the sky. They hold up a hell of a lot more than that. Much more than that. Now, what happens in this? Let's look at global warming and the basic tasks that poor women perform. Now, you know, one of the wonderful things that these economists, forgive me for talking about them, but what these mainstream economists do is to tell us that the promise of capitalism is that hard work, and you can also be a billionaire like Mukesh Ambani or Gautam Adani or Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. If you work hard, you can also be like that. You know, there's a basic flaw in this argument. If hard work made you a billionaire, every woman in rural India, Africa, and Latin America would be a billionaire. Does anyone work harder than that? But we know that there are no billionaires amongst these women. So it means that billionaires are making their money through ways other than hard work. Right? It's not just hard work. In India, I would say 100% rural women and 85% urban women would be billionaires if you judge by hard work. However, what is the nature of the work of, say, a woman sitting in deep interior South Tamil Nadu or say in the hills of Uttarakhand, wherever? 3 basic functions: fetching fuel, fetching water, fetching firewood, fetching fuel. These are the basic tasks that come up for a woman. Do you know that fetching fuel, water, firewood, a rural Indian woman can spend 6 to 8 hours of her day every day on those 3 chores. In the hills of Uttarakhand, in the hills of Jharkhand, in Maharashtra, in Thane, in the hilly areas, young women's qualification for marriage. They want to know how much water can she fetch. Okay? You are actually this is part of your marriage negotiation. How much water can you fetch? I have been present at such negotiations. You'll find one such story in my book, The Hills of Hardship, where if a woman is strong and can fetch more water, walk more distances, walk more, climb more hills, then she is considered a very suitable girl for their boy. And you will spend the rest of your life fetching fuel, food and water for their boy. Now, what happens when the warming happens? The amount of water shrinks. Droughts grow. The forest begins to decline. Now maybe that was taking 4 to 5 hours of your day every day. Now it will take 8 hours, 10 hours. In the drought areas of Bid in Maharashtra, you can see it when Ramanathapuram has one of its droughts, you can see it. How much the labor of the woman goes up. Second, not only does the sun, not only does the warming shrink natural resources, it's also blazing down on that woman while she is at work. You will find that all surveys show you that women and girls are more likely to suffer heat stroke when there is a heat wave on. Once in Telangana, combine that with poverty. Women are more dependent than men on natural resources. Okay, they go and collect stuff, they bring it home. But women have less access to those resources because women are poorer. Women are much poorer than men because they don't own resources. In this country, 8 to 10% of women have land in their names. Otherwise, they're completely dependent. In the state of Maharashtra, I was born and brought up in Tamil Nadu, but in the state of Maharashtra, we have documented cases where a woman is married off, loses her husband or is abandoned by her husband, comes back to the family home and works as a laborer because she has no claim to that land. This happens in many parts of the country. This is your country, this is your society, face up to it. If you want to change the reality, you've got to first admit the truth about ourselves. Then, now what happens as the resources grow fewer, and the food supply of the woman shrinks fastest. Now, in an average Indian rural or urban family also, what the heck? What's the difference? Who eats last and least? Yeah. So first, she feeds the husband, the husband's parents if they are there. Then she feeds the children. Yeah. And she is duty bound to feed the boy better than the girl. And last, she eats herself whatever is left. Now, with warming and climate change is affecting agriculture so tremendously, and as it is, 43% of the work of physical labor in agriculture is said to be women. That's absolutely a bogus figure. It's up to 60% of all labor done in Indian agriculture is done by women. Now, the workload is growing. The warming is burning her head off. Just look at who does what work. Okay. Now, every one of you, this being Tamil Nadu, Every one of you has seen paddy transplantation, right? In the season. How many men have you seen doing transplantation? Fuel. How many men have you seen picking up the cow dung from the streets? Who brings that fuel? That's what women do. Each of these tasks is growing harder and harder. Incidentally, do you know the contribution of women to the national economy? The contribution of women to the national economy in cow dung? The National Institute of Science many years ago did a calculation that women and adolescent girls are saving India billions of dollars each year. Why? Because if you didn't collect that fuel, you'd have to import petroleum products, which is the highest share of your import budget, of your import expenditure. You'd have to import petroleum products if all the women said, no, we are not going to collect firewood, we are not going to collect dung. Now, but the nature of our society and of most societies in the world is that we don't calculate this unpaid labor. Women are dying doing the job of fetching food and water. Women are dying of illness from the heat stroke that comes with. I will give you specific examples and I'll show you some of the things women do under climate change. Now, if that is and especially say when drought comes along, what happens? The distances you walk for the water are much further. Now, when all of this is happening, that share of the food declines, the amount of labor increases. Okay, just a little number for you on one thing about why that figure is not included. Most of unpaid labor, that's why the ILO did the study. Unpaid labor is not calculated in your GDP. It's not calculated. Women's work is not calculated in your gross domestic product. To my mind, that gives the whole other meaning to the word gross. So it's not calculated in that labor, in the GDP. Now here's the funny thing. Those billions of dollars that women and girls save from collecting cow dung, it's not going to be counted in the GDP. It's not listed in your stock exchange, right? Cow dung is not listed on your stock exchange. Cow dung is not listed on the stock exchange, but a lot of other bullshit is. Right? Maybe it's a gender thing, cows versus bulls or who knows. But so in every sphere we exclude women from the calculation of the gross domestic product. Now there's another thing that happens as warming increases. As the global warming increases, schools are very badly affected. Schooling is very badly affected. Now there's less and less water at home, and they have to collect that water. They have to collect more fuel. One person can't do it all. So guys, who drops out of school to help mama? Yeah. So women's education is also devastated. You can see it in any drought area. More intense the drought, Bid, Maharashtra, and Ramnad, the more intense the drought, the higher the dropout rate of girls. And typically, girls dropping out of school, very few of them go back to it. Boys dropping out of school have a better chance after 2 years or 3 years of resuming, not girls. You're out, you're out. The next issue is how to prove that you are worthy of getting enough water to marry that boy. That's what you are supposed to do. That's what you're reduced to. So, look at it. It affects their health. It affects their labor. It affects their livelihoods. And it destroys their livelihoods. It hurts their food supply. Yeah. And it devastates their everyday life and health. So the links are very, very clear in what is the link between. Oh, there's another way you can look at it right from Tamil Nadu also. All post-disasters, whenever there's a disaster, you will find, and climate change is spurring more and more disasters, right? It's spurring more and more disasters. Remember the one you had? Some of you may have just about been born or not yet. 2004 December, tsunami. Now all the studies of tsunami and other catastrophic climate events, extreme weather events, shows us one thing. In the post-disaster relief efforts, women and girls have much less access to the relief materials. Those are usually monopolized by men. Men go to the queues. Men are pushing their way to the front. The official who's been brought up in our typical Indian family will deal with the man, not with the woman. The man can be more assertive. If a woman tries being assertive in that queue, she'll be thrown out or beaten up. All the studies of post-tsunami Tamil Nadu, many studies of catastrophes elsewhere, even if you look at the Turkey earthquake or whatever, women and girls have much less, women and children who are, an extension of that woman, have much less access to the relief materials that come in all post-disasters. Yeah. Also, when you weaken the state of the human being's body, do you know that if you look at the, say, various ailments coming up, say like malaria, dengue, that immediately has an effect on maternal and neonatal health episodes. They are much more vulnerable. They are much less fed. They are much less well fed. They are much more vulnerable. So you have, with dengue, with malaria, with anything, even in long COVID, the effects are much more on poor women and poor girls than on anyone else. That is simply the fact.